Everyone, the time is 8:03 a.m. It is Saturday, January the 28th. Is that right? Is this the 28th? It can't be the 28th. Wow. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Tobias,
Here. Present.
Heiser, Flores Kale,
Here.
Zuniga,
Here.
Bradshaw, Parsley.
Here.
All right, 5 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have one registered to speak. First up, Mayor Mike Anderson.
Good morning. It's bright early Saturday morning. My name is Mike Anderson. I am representing Tanglewood Properties, which is the property that Marketplace goes through. And I'm just simply here this morning to answer any questions if any of you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the comments forms that I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments period. It is now closed. Next up, general discussion regarding 2022 road bond. We do have 2 meetings, just so that everybody is aware. We have an 8 a.m. meeting. We also have one scheduled for 10 a.m. for council to conclude business from our last city council meeting. So I'm hoping that we can try and keep the conversation about the workshop bonds to 2 hours so that we can gavel in at 10 o'clock for our next meeting. So that's my stated goal, and we'll see if we can meet it. All right, Mr. Hendrix, Mr. Cantalupo.
Mike's not working. Good morning, Mayor, Council. For the record, I'm Jerry Hendrix, Interim City Manager. This morning is the workshop on our Kyle Road bonds that you requested earlier this year. And our general engineering contractor, Joe Cantalupo, and his team from K-Freeze is here to present the status of all the road bond and projects and receive feedback from you on next steps. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Joe and his team.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. As Jerry said, my name is Joe Cantalupo. I work for K-Freeze and Associates, and I am our project director, our project manager for the city's road bond program. We have a presentation to go through this morning. We thought the best way to bring you up to speed and to have you engage in the projects was to actually go through each one of them. And we've got a little stuff before in terms of reminders, and if we have time, we're going to seek your input on how we'd on some other things. So this morning we'd like to maybe introduce ourselves. We did something we normally don't do is I brought some of the team with us. And the reason we did that is because the way we're organized, you have 8 projects that are pretty substantial, pretty big. And so while I manage the team, we have corridor managers and other staff that keep this going. It is not necessarily a full-time job, but it does require more than 1 or 2 people to keep, everything moving. So if it's okay with you, I'd just like to have them introduce themselves very, very quickly. And I probably should have warned them. You guys just want to go real fast?
I'm Caroline LaFollette with K-Freeze. I'm Marie Gwen Garcia with KFA. I'm Jennifer Sullivan with KFA. I'm the corridor manager for Marketplace Avenue, Windy Hill Road, and Lemon Creek Road.
I'm Ryan Thomas with KFA. I'm the corridor manager for BB and Kyle Lehman.
Pete Ring with KFA. I'm the corridor manager for Seton Colors and 150 and also Old Stagecoach.
I'm Jesse Miller. I'm with Proline Advisory Group. We're sub to KFA. Project schedules.
Morning. Bill Parks with Frontline Advisory Group, as Nancy said, working.
So again, the way we're organized is the corridor managers will manage sort of day-to-day all the projects. Ruby and Caroline are engineers that will provide engineering support to the design engineers and to the corridor managers. Bill and Jesse are the folks that will help us manage the expenditures, track the budgeting. They'll also help keep the master schedule in line. There are a lot of interactions, especially as the projects get through design and go into right-of-way and utility coordination. And it is not a small undertaking to keep everything in line, but they're also the folks that are going to help us measure our performance. One of the things you want to know is whether or not we're doing the job we set out to do. And so they'll keep the performance measures, and they'll be a big part of the reporting we do to you from time to time to let you know whether or not we're on track and how things are going. So I'm going to talk about the goals for the meeting. We're going to give you a quick sort of status of where things have been and what we're working on. And then we'll spend most of our time on reviewing the projects. And if we have time, we'd like a little feedback on how we'd like to communicate with you in the future, right, to get you the information and the updates you need when you want them and in the format you need. And then we'll just review next steps. So our goals for this meeting, I said we want to review the program status. We want to review the project scopes based on those preliminary engineering reports that we did last summer and that were used to help prepare for the bond. And the little bit of stakeholder coordination that we've done so far. When we were here in December to give an update, council meeting, right, you'd asked us not to really get too far ahead until we had a chance to sit with you and take you through the projects. So when I talk about stakeholder coordination, it is with stakeholders that have either reached out to staff or reached out to us for a status or to just, get some information about what was going on. And then we want to, again, determine a path forward for council updates and talk about next steps. So you've seen this a lot, but I just thought we'd throw it up and just remind everyone what the projects are. This is an order you're not used to seeing them in, and we reordered them for today because, and this is just a judgment on our part, we talked about the projects that appear to be a little more straightforward than others, and we thought it would be good to sort of order them in that way, I guess in a way to just warm us up, maybe to talk about more complicated things. And there is, the limits, the length of each project, and then what the budgeted cost is. And then we always show this map, and you can see that the blue lines, the blue projects, are the ones that involve upgrading existing facilities, and the red ones are what we call greenfield or new construction projects. And it's always a good reminder, we think, to show how the projects are distributed, throughout the city. So again, since the bond passed, right, we were waiting to talk to council, and we're not doing a whole lot because the feedback we got was you wanted to engage and review everything. But there were things that we were able to do and keep working on that didn't take a lot of time or effort that would put us in a position to start quickly once we all agreed that it was time to move forward. And one of those things was we continued to work with the design engineers, those firms that were selected to do the actual designs on the draft scopes and fees for the projects. Now, those aren't complete, but we've gotten those to the point where, depending on the direction we're given today, we will be able to complete those quickly, bring those back to council for review and approval, and this way we're not losing any more time developing scopes and fees. We also have started to put together a draft master schedule based on the initial project scopes, and we will finish that again once we get started, and we will come back, I'll probably come back during a regular council meeting or workshop, whatever you all decide, to show you how the master schedule is laying out and what you can expect in terms of not only each project, but also the program as a whole. When projects we think will be through design, when they'll go into right-of-way and utility coordination, and then when they'll go into construction. And then we've also, again, been coordinating with mostly developers, a few property owners where applicable. And again, where applicable means when they've reached out to us and wanted an update or share some ideas or see what the city was thinking in terms of each project. So we're going to get into the projects now. And I don't know if you want me to take a deep breath after each project, so ask questions, or you just want to pepper me with them as they come up. So I'm just going to start. So the Windy Hill Road project is adding capacity, right? It's adding capacity to Windy Hill from about Purple Martin Avenue all the way over to the I-35 frontage lane. And it does involve a little bit of a realignment. And you can see that typical section or the cross section, it is to make sure that that portion of Windy Hill Road is 2 lanes in each direction and a turn lane in the middle. The budgeted cost for that project is about $15 million. And you'll see that bullet, it says part of a combined TxDOT-AFA. I'm going to take a few seconds here and explain what we mean by that. A few of the projects that you've authorized are on the TxDOT roadway system. And whenever you work on the TxDOT roadway system, you need to enter an agreement with them. In other words, they need to give you permission to work on their system, to improve it for them. And so that agreement is called an advanced funding agreement. And to our way of thinking, it's a little misleading because those agreements don't always involve money. But that AFA, as we call it, is an agreement between, in this case, the city and TxDOT, that the city could develop a project and implement a project on TxDOT's road. And when you do that, it requires a lot of upfront agreeing and a lot of coordination. And the other set of projects, right, there are some projects that connect to the TxDOT system, right? They intersect, right, like an intersection. They're not on the TxDOT system. Those also need a level of coordination and permission from TxDOT, but it's not as great as if you're working on their system. And so we are able to combine all of those projects that simply connect to TxDOT through what we call a combined TxDOT-AFA. So Windy Hill Road is one of the projects that we will need to coordinate with TxDOT, but it's sort of a lesser amount or lower level of coordination. Yes, please.
For clarification, is Joanne here? Okay, I just want to make sure that we have the right scope, because I believe from Cherrywood to Purple Martin was already worked on by the county, and Joanne worked collectively with them, so I just want to make sure we're budgeting for the right amount of road.
Sure. Part of what I should have mentioned is after today, right, assuming we move forward, we're going to go through and double check all the scopes, the limits, and just make sure everything is where it should be. There are lots of moving parts that have nothing to do with any of us are doing that we always have to go back and regroup on, recycle on.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Nope, I went too fast. So that was Windy Hill, and now we're going to move to Marketplace. So this project is going to connect the northern and southern segments of Marketplace Avenue. The existing segment from 1626 to Old Bridge Trail, that's an existing segment, but it's going to be improved to match the new piece. And that new piece is going to have 2 12-foot lanes in each direction. It'll have a median, and it'll have sidewalks on either side. The budgeted cost for this project is $11.2 million. So this is a project that we believe can go to straight to plan specifications and estimates, right? We call that PS&E. When we develop road projects, we usually develop a schematic design, which we all call 30%, which starts to lay out the basic elements of a project and the alignment. But when we started looking at all of these, we tried to see if there were any projects that could skip that full schematic phase. And when we did the preliminary engineering reports and we looked at marketplace, what we realized is determining the alignment could be a very simple matter, right? There's one property owner, there's a defined beginning and there's a defined end. There's no existing utilities really to move, and so our assumption is that they can do a little bit of cleanup work on the PER and that preliminary engineering report. We can skip that schematic phase and go straight into engineering, when the city's ready to have us do that. That would be, a little bit of savings of money in terms of the road project, and it would be a little bit of savings of time. This project is also part of a combined AFA with TxDOT, meaning that while Marketplace is not a state road, it does connect to 1626, so there's a level of coordination there. This is also one of the projects where the property owner reached out to us and wanted to understand a little bit more about, the specific elements of the project. And we sat down with them and worked through a couple of things and figured that it would be best, for the project if the vibe crossed at Old Bridge Trail, because that would reduce the right-of-way needs and the needs for detention of water. And so we are, a little bit ahead on thinking through what this final scope would be. And again, when the city has figured everything else it has to figure out with projects like this, we'll be ready to move forward with that. So again, this is purely from a road point of view. This does not involve, any of the underlying land use decisions that will be made. But so the path forward for this project would be to make sure that we try to address water quality. It is not necessarily a requirement in this particular area, but city staff has indicated that they'd like to see if we can build some water quality features into the project. And we want to make sure that city-owned utilities are in the scope. They were included in the cost estimate. We want to go back and make sure that they're included in the design scope and fee for the design engineer. Just, again, it's an example of all these things we need to tidy up as we go and finalize those design scopes. I'm going to take a breath.
Quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Just looking back at that Windy Hill, the curvature is that just a sketch, the way it looks? Will it actually branch a little better, I guess, Y into 35?
They're going to laugh because I'm going to use the word idealized. Yes, it's more or less a sketch. There is the current preliminary engineering report, the current schematic does have that curve on Windy Hill being made better, being straightened out somewhat. And that will depend a lot on, again, when we begin coordination with that specific property owner. But it does include a somewhat straightening out of the roadway. And that's actually part of adding to the capacity. When you can remove things like nasty curves, it helps preserve and beef up the capacity a little bit. It's not as good as widening it, but it helps a little bit.
Okay, and then it doesn't have sidewalks because, why?
Yeah, there are 2 5-foot sidewalks.
Oh, there are? Okay.
And I should have mentioned that, and I apologize.
It didn't have it on the sketch. But then we can assume those are sidewalks.
Right.
Okay.
So you'll see that 5-foot strip, and then on others, you'll see a 10-foot strip, and it'll say SUP, which is a shared use path, which is the vibe. So next, I'm going to move on to Kyle Parkway, the Lehman Road extension. So this is actually, you can see from the diagram, it's actually two pieces, right? The first part of the project extends Lehman Road from Bunton Creek Road to Daisy Lane, and it extends Kyle Parkway into the Lehman Road extension. And the budgeted cost for this is $42.3 million. And you can see that there is two 12-foot lanes, no center turn lane, and then there are two 5-foot sidewalks as part of this project. This is another project where we believe it can go straight to PS&E. And again, it's a little bit of a cleaning up of the schematic work that was done in the preliminary engineering report. But we don't have to go through the full schematic phase. So again, it's a little, some savings in time, some savings in money. And this is a project, and there are a few like this, where the Alliance Regional water folks, right, they're planning a big water line to come through the city and to serve the city. And there are several areas where the Arwa water line conflicts potentially with the road bond projects. And so one of the things we did a couple of weeks ago was begin a conversation with Arwa. Now, luckily, Arwa they were aware that the city was working on a set of bond projects. They were aware that some of the projects would be in areas where they wanted to place the water line. So what we learned is we have some time, right, to better coordinate with them to see how you resolve the conflicts. And in some cases, they understand that they may have to move their water line a little bit, shift it. And in some cases, we might modify, how the road crosses the water line or the water line goes under the road. But this is one of the projects where we'd like to, we don't want to wait too much longer because we don't want to hold the Arwa folks up because that's important to the city for a whole bunch of other reasons. So there were two alternatives prepared for this, and you really got to look at those diagrams to understand. But what we're doing, what we're going to move forward with, unless we get different advice, is we're eliminating alternative one, and there is no real big difference in terms of how those two alternatives will ultimately function. There is a little bit of a difference in the alignment and where, the roundabouts are placed. Again, it doesn't change the nature of the project or how it will ultimately function, but it does allow us, to minimize right-of-way acquisition and interruptions to property owners with, with the road going through if we pick alternative two. The other thing we want to do is at the intersection of Lehman and Bunton Creek, right, there's a planned roundabout. But as we look at this a little bit more, what we want to do, what we're going to do to the scope with the design engineers is add an analysis of a traffic signal. We want to compare what a traffic signal would do and how it would operate compared to a roundabout. And the reason is that it's very close to a school, and why roundabouts get built near activity centers like schools, quite often, and they function well. We thought this is so important that it's better to just spend a little bit more time up front to make sure that, just to see what's better, a traffic signal or roundabout. And that's one of the things that we'll move forward with this, doing too. And that's another example of one of those adjustments we'll make to the design scopes to make sure it's built in from the beginning. I'll take a breath. I'm not sure what I like better, when no one asks questions or when we're not getting asked questions.
I can tell you that one looks like the complicated one, layman and,
Well, remember, Councilmember, we're going down a list, and the more complicated ones are coming.
It's gonna get worse.
Oh, I could see
I
that.
don't know where, I didn't say worse. They just get more interesting and fun.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I feel like when I was reviewing these, that these roads also intersect with another road going more north. And so when you guys look at the traffic signal or roundabout study, I would like to take into consideration how that additional feature, road adding is going to also eliminate congestion. And so sometimes I'm scared we just look at like little circle parts, and taking a look at the bigger picture, I feel like it would not be a good idea to have a roundabout because it's close to a school. But also, if we look at the big picture, then we see, okay, well, all this traffic is going to be less congested as it goes out. So I guess my ask is that you just look at the whole picture, which I have no doubt you'll do. But I know when I was looking at these, that how they connect to other roads, and how I was like, oh, okay, well, if it goes up here and it splits off, then it's going to be even easier for the traffic, at this intersection. And then there was another thing, I just wanted to make sure that we're looping our staff in, because when I had a meeting with them, they had some good ideas about the natural flow. And so if we could work with the, Public Works, which I'm sure you guys will, about the natural flow of traffic. And I think it comes off just a little bit differently, but it makes more sense if you're talking about the flow of traffic.
So normally, and if I start to get sideways, one of them, probably people, will interrupt me, but when they do an analysis of an intersection, they do look to a certain extent at background growth in traffic. If you're asking, right, if council wishes us to make sure that they look at a little in greater detail to the impacts of some surrounding roads, we can make sure and see that they build that into the analysis. I think, though, at least from my point of view, we need to be careful that we're not asking them to study a large area, because that's a different type of study, to do like an area-wide model. But certainly making sure that this intersection doesn't cause other surrounding roadways to get out of sorts is something we can make sure we build in.
I think I'm saying the opposite. What I'm trying to say is the opposite, right? Because there's so much good changes to the east side. I think it's a good idea to look at it collectively instead of just individually, because the more that they update roads, the more I see the flow of traffic going a lot smoother, if that makes sense. Whereas like on the west side, I feel like it is very pieced and individualized. On the east side, when you do all of it, it looks like it's all coming together to make the whole flow of the east side a little bit more smoother.
I understand. That gets beyond any one individual project. If you want us to look at an entire area, that's a much different effort. It gets beyond one project.
Okay, I guess, just to be clear, I'd like feedback from the council to kind of decide if we want to do that or not. Because I think it's going to be is that going to be a different cost, or how does that work?
It would be, and I don't know, we'd have to scope it a little bit. It would be a much different cost, and it would be, if we couldn't move forward with the design of the other projects because we wanted to test them collectively, it would add a substantial amount of time. And we'd have to go, well, we could find someone to help us with it. That's it. Yeah, so they make a good point, right, is that the transportation master plan, right, did look at how the whole system would come together, and that's how those projects got on the master plan, and these projects came out of your master plan. So to a certain extent, it's been looked at.
Okay.
Just one last question.
Yes.
So Parkway exit, is that open green space right now, or is that a road that exists? None of this is a new road through subdivisions, right?
Oh, no.
So we're talking about undeveloped land right
th-
now.
These are, right, we call them greenfield.
Everything
Undeveloped, yes,
everything on
yes.
the proposal is a greenfield right now,
On this particular project.
Okay.
Not all the projects are.
where we'll have to widen what's already there.
Exactly. Those are the more interesting projects that are lower on the list this morning.
Okay.
Stagecoach, Old Stagecoach Road and Center Street, and you'll see in parentheses, it says off-system. And we're distinguishing between, again, off-system, which is a non-text dot road, and then we'll get to the on-system portion. So this project is going to improve Old Stagecoach Road from 150 to Center Street, and that is about a $29 million project. And it will also improve Center Street from Old Stagecoach Road to Veterans Drive. That is the portion of Center Street that is a non-text dot road, right? It's off-system, and that's, again, why we've separated them. The Old Stagecoach Road, the original proposal was for 2 lanes in each direction, and sidewalks on either side, and the same thing with the Center Street portion of it. 2 lanes in each direction, 12 feet, and pedestrian facilities on either side. This project has a little bit more history because before the bond was brought to life and we were engaged, the city had 30% plans done back in 2019. And when we started to look at it, right, there were a couple adjustments that were made, right? We moved the intersection at the 4 north of the project at 150 and Veterans Drive was moving to the Center Street project, the on-system portion of the project. Those were, we just thought it'd be easier to administer it that way. And then as we bring this through, one of the things that staff, raised to us, and we had started to zoom in on, is that while the original proposal, while the city's plan says 2 lanes in each direction, when you go out there and you look at Old Stagecoach Road and the off-system portion of Center Street, the right-of-way requirements are extremely, intense, right? And it would be a huge interruption, more than average, say, to the properties along that. And so one of the things we'll go back and do is see whether or not a 3-lane section makes sense. And our gut reaction is that a 3-lane section, when traveling in each direction with a center turn lane, will make sense for that when you weigh it against the impact it would have on property owners. You're not going to lose a whole lot in terms of operation of the road because of the center turn lane. But again, when you weigh that against, the fact that that is, for the most part, a residential area, there's a lot of activity on it. What you don't want to do is add the 4 lanes and then just sort of, have a devastating effect on the surrounding properties. So we are leaning toward a 3-lane section, although the plan said in the initial schematic was done showing a 4-lane section. And that's something that, we'd like you to be aware of, is that everything else being equal, if we're left to our own, we will knock that down probably to a 3-lane section.
I have a question. So I have 2 questions. My first one is, are you guys going to get with Wallace Middle School? Because I know they have drainage issues out there, and I just want to make sure that those are addressed while we're laying down the roads.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We will, so when this all gears up, right, and we kick in the high gear, it's not only the middle school, we will coordinate with surrounding property owners. And with any transportation project that we do or other engineers do anyway, drainage is one of the biggest things that we pay attention to, right? A transportation project cannot make drainage issues any worse, and a lot of times what we try and do, and it just sort of happens naturally, is you can actually make them a little bit better. So, Councilmember, it just won't be with the middle school. The drainage issues for each and every one of these projects will be looked at.
Okay, and then can you tell me what a zigzag is? On here it says, desire to zigzag Center Street for traffic calming. And I tried to Google that, but I couldn't figure out what it was.
So just think about it as if you're on the road and you're, don't think vertically, think horizontally. And zigzag is, instead of going a straight line, you would zigzag the road. And the idea is that if you add some horizontal deflection, in other words, you come off straight, that people will slow down and pay attention more. And that comes in lots of different formats. When you're in like a more urban environment, like this piece of Center Street, I'm not saying that's will happen here, but a lot of times they'll take the corners and bulb them out. And so people will see that, you know, the road sort of closing in on them and slow down. But it can be a form of traffic calming, you know, to add that little bit of horizontal deflection. But again, all of those things, right, whether they make it all the way through design really depends on weighing it against, you know, what the impact would be on surrounding properties. And it's not to say that these projects will have no impact, but our job is, right, is to help correct, for example, drainage issues, and our job is to minimize where we can impacts to surrounding properties.
So I just had another question, sorry.
Yes.
So on the old Stagecoach and the Center Street, so you designed for 4 lanes. Did you suggest you're gonna now just do it all 3 lane?
No, so.
Or only a segment of it? Because I live off of 150, and that's 3 lanes. I think we would all love 4. So is this a heavy, dense area where we're going to 3 lanes?
So the road's not designed yet. It's in, the work that was done in 2019 was a schematic. That's like the very beginning, first stage of design, and that's basically to lay out the line and to tell you what you're up against in terms of properties, drainage issues, and you know, everything. So what we'd like to do is reevaluate whether or not the schematic makes sense at 4 lanes, right? And part of that evaluation will look at how the road has to function. Does it make sense from a moving traffic safely and efficiently point of view, weighed against if it will have impacts on surrounding properties? And yes, in this area, right, it is a little more dense than other projects in other parts of the city. And so the impact on surrounding properties using 4 lanes would be significant. So in our coordination with staff, we all agreed that it would be a good idea to look at the 3 lanes. And our gut, right, will let, you know, the evaluation make the decision, but our gut is that it will move down to 3 lanes. A lot of times, 3 lanes, it depends on where you are, but if you have a good turn lane, 3 lanes will work as efficiently and sometimes a little bit more efficiently than 4 lanes. Because if you have 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and you don't have a turn lane, if someone's going to make a left,
Sure.
that's when bad things can happen.
So I guess I'm confused just a little bit because, so this is not there. This is going to be a new road, right? Or is this an upgrade?
It's an upgrade of the road.
See-
It's a widening and reconstruction.
So there's already a 3 lane there or a 2 lane. You can call it a 2 lane.
It's a 3. It's 2, mostly 2. It's a little
A
unorganized.
small 2 lane.
Right.
It's a small 2 lane.
Right. And so maybe we should have started with that,
Yes,
right?
yes, so I'm confused when
Yeah.
you're doing a new versus something's already there and now you're just gonna go to 3
So this is,
versus 4.
so I'll back up a second. This is one of the projects, right, where we're improving the existing road.
Okay,
And so part of the improvement will be a wholesale reconstruction of the road to just bring the condition up.
okay.
As part of that reconstruction, what we want to do, right, what the city's transportation plan said was, let's add capacity, right, because the city's growing, this part of the city's growing. So the engineers that did this in 2019 said, well, the best way to add capacity is to just make it 2 lanes in each direction. That was their proposal. That sat for a while.
Right.
Now we pick it up and we look at it and say, well, how viable is actually putting 2 lanes in each direction? That was a great idea, but now you're getting down into the details. And when you get into the details and you look at what it would take to actually reconstruct the road to put 4 lanes, and you realize that the trade-off between having 2 lanes in each direction and the effect on surrounding properties, right, that trade-off is too great. And that's why we're leaning toward the 3 lanes. So
Or we just did it too late. Probably, if it had been done sooner, maybe the 4 would have been the path.
If,
Right?
right, if properties were configured differently and if
Right.
there was more available right away. But
Right.
what you don't want to do, and this is sort of a general statement, you don't want, right, you don't want the solution,
Right.
right, to wipe out the very thing you're trying to help. And that, we believe, that putting 2 lanes in each direction might very well change the nature of the road, the surrounding properties, which is something we don't think anyone wants.
No, I get it. So I think if we would have started with this is an existing road,
Yes, I'm
and now
sorry,
let's get it, because I would have said anything's better than nothing there, but there was already something there. Okay.
And Councilmember Flores Kell's point, there are other things that you need to take care of that you want to make sure that you have room for, right? I mean, there are
Sure.
drainage issues and things like that, and that all gets factored in. So this is the on-system part of Center Street, and it's an existing road, and it is a full reconstruction from Veterans Drive down to Main Street, and the budgeted cost for this is $10.1 million. It has a center turn lane. It has 11-foot lanes on either side. It has parking on one side, and then there's the Vibe Trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other. Yes, Councilmember.
Before we move on,
Sure.
going back to Stagecoach, I think we all have concerns, one way or another, whether we take it down or leave it up, over the tree. And so I just want to make sure that there's going to be some kind of solid outreach when we decide what the city's going to do with that tree. And I want that to be addressed one way or another. I mean, I get it's a touchy subject, but if we don't talk about it, that's not a solution.
It will be part of the conversation. Yeah. I mean, up until a while ago, I lived in Hayes County, and actually, outside of work, I spent a lot of area around Kyle. Personally, I'm aware of the tree, but it is going to be an issue. I mean, there's no way getting around the fact that, there's going to have to be a very open and honest discussion about the tree. But again, none of these projects are going to proceed through design and go to construction without coordination with the community. And I don't want to get into that right now because we don't have that plan laid out. But what we're thinking now for coordination is that we will, from time to time, again, with council's blessing, engage the community in general to just give them updates about how the bond program is going as a whole. But every project will have a certain level of coordination. And we fully expect that when we start with Old Stagecoach Road, we're going to have, a conversation with the community and council about the tree.
Are we talking about the one in the corner? What specific?
Isn't it behind like Six Creeks or?
It is.
Behind Old
It's-
Stagecoach Road?
I always think it's in the middle of Old State, not
Oh, right.
literally in the middle, but lengthwise. But you're right, it's just out there.
Well, and so there's actually an old council meeting you can watch where we had someone do a tree study on the tree and gave a full presentation.
It's an accident waiting to happen, isn't it? Also.
Oh,
You
yeah.
Slam into it.
It's
Someone's gonna
terrible.
be liable, right?
Just go watch the video to get a sense
Yeah,
of it, but yeah.
Okay.
From a traffic point of view, for what the road needs to be to serve the community, the tree should probably not be there. And I don't mean to sound unemotional about it, but the other fact of the matter is the tree is, in terms of its health, is probably on, I think that's what the report showed, right? It's a little bit on borrowed time.
Actually, Jerry, I don't know if you've got it in your inbox somewhere, the actual report. If you can find that and just email it to council so they can be aware of it.
But it can be transplanted too. I've seen historical trees removed, picked up and moved somewhere else.
The tree will be a topic every time Stagecoach gets brought up.
Okay.
That's why
I'm
we
just
yes.
Florence Kale's going to bring it up every single time.
I'm
We're
letting
going to get our
everyone know that
chances
I'm
to
not saying
discuss the
just
tree.
chop it down. There's other options.
I'm having a flashback because in a previous life, I worked on a project in the state of Delaware when I worked for the DOT that involved a tree just like this. And if I could just postpone that
Right.
dream one
Right.
more day, I'll be happy.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Center Street moving forward, we just, this is one, I mean, they're all going to require a certain amount of coordination and thought. But we want to make sure we got the vibe alignment straight, and that, the road regardless of what its final configuration is, supports what the city's trying to accomplish downtown. This is, if you look outside and you see some of the cool stuff you guys have done with the park and everything, this project is going to be sort of a big positive change for the city. Sorry, I editorialized a little bit. Button Creek Road.
Just
So-
one question,
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
I don't want to just keep asking you, but, so what about the utility side on Center Street? Is that going to be worked out? Are there water lines there? Because this is already developed.
So,
From-
right, the utilities, and I can't speak to it right now, but, the council's stated preference, right, a couple of statements about utilities was to try and bury, for the projects where the utilities were still above ground, to try and, to get them buried. And, when the designers in our team, our corridor managers, are working through the elements of the projects, for everything that's existing, right, if it needs to be moved out of the way, it will be moved out of the way. And I would imagine that if there are opportunities, coordinating with Leon and his staff, to upgrade some of the lines that need to be upgraded, we'll include that into the scope and into the, to the design, into the construction. So the big answer is yes, utilities, they're an integral part of each one of these projects, and sometimes it'll be, well, not simply, it'll be just moving them, trying to get them underground, and sometimes it'll be, moving them, getting them underground, in the case of like electric and cable and things like that, or upgrading them, right?
What about like wastewater? Because if you put cement over, are they nearby or are they off a few
I-
feet away?
I can't speak to exactly how that gets done, but that's all considered part, like, it's, you're trying to make the best use of the space possible. So you'll try and put the utilities in places where if you need to get at them, they're going to cause the least amount of disruption. And that will certainly be the goal with not only this project, with any of the other projects. But that's not to say that 10, 15, 20 years from now, if the line needs to be replaced, you're not going to have to cut a hole into the ground, into the pavement.
Okay.
But I just can't tell you the specifics of this one because I'm not that familiar with it and we're not there yet.
All right.
Okay. Button Creek Road. So the goal of this project is to straighten out the curves along Button Creek Road between Daisy Lane and Goforth. The cost for this is just over $28 million. This is, an existing road that will have some modification to it. It'll have 2 12-foot lanes in each direction. There's a sidewalk on one side and a supplemental, a shared use path, which is the Vibe, on the other side. This project, so if we go back to the Kyle Parkway Extension, Lehman Road Extension project, where the Lehman Road Extension hits Button Creek Road, the figuring out of whether or not a signal or a roundabout is installed there might affect this project a little bit. Now, we just mentioned that, but that's something that we'll just take care of through the natural course of design is depending on the decision that gets made on the Kyle Parkway Extension, Lehman Road Extension project with regard to that intersection, we may have to modify a little bit, that end of Button Creek Road.
That one, since it doesn't have a dividing median, is there more of a public safety? Because now you got cars in
Right.
opposite directions at 66
A
miles an
lot has
hour.
to do with the context and the circumstance. One of the things we'll do is to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, the Transportation Mobility Master Plan, right, called for that, and so we're trying to honor that. But if we dig into it a little bit and we think that something else should be different, we'll come back.
I've seen the cars swerve over to the other
Oh,
lane, because then they're
absolutely.
incoming
And-
into each other.
And that can even happen with a median, but you're correct. In some circumstances, it could increase the chances, yes. So, but again, it's you got to look at each road as to where it exists,
Yeah, sure.
right, and what it's going to serve.
I just need to point it out to let you know, I'm
yeah,
aware of it,
absolutely.
I'm addressing it, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
looking at this. So if we do this, and down the road, down the line, there are these accidents. I did bring this up.
Yeah, yeah.
That I was aware oncoming traffic could come at a fast speed.
You know, the other thing that can happen with this project, and we're going to get to another one later, is that it's not just from the point of view of safety. It's, again, you know, the right-of-way issues could come up. Or maybe, you know, there's another issue that we don't know about that's more difficult to solve that would be made easier if we just scaled it down, you know, to a three-lane section. So there's lots of things that can affect it. But as of today, this is what we believe will work, and this is what, you know, we're going to move forward through the design process.
To put more capacity on the roads.
Right.
Right.
Now, again, this is a different part of the city. The demands for travel are different. You know, they look different, they feel different. You know, the nature of growth out here is a little bit different.
Sure.
So that all goes into the hopper and part of the decision.
My concern for Button Creek is the development that's coming out there. There's going to be a lot more homes. And so what Councilmember Zuniga is saying is exactly spot on. I don't know why this would be lower down the list because it is literally a one-lane road. And putting a center lane stripe in it would make it more difficult. So we can't even do that. So my concern is there's a lot of development coming, and I believe there's going to be like a brewery and a whole bunch of homes, and we really want to see that place develop. And so if it's just the right-of-way acquisitions that's holding this up, I would like to see this particular road done a little bit sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so I apologize. When I said we ordered them, it wasn't in order that we're going to approach them because that part's coming.
Yes, sir.
It's in the order of what we thought would be.
Right, so I guess
Sorry.
my question is what
complexity.
makes this complex? Just the right-of-way acquisitions?
Well, as we get down the list of complexity, not necessarily order, it's the environment you're working in. It's right-of-way acquisitions. It's the utilities. It's just a combination of things. Yes, it is complex, mostly with regard to right-of-way acquisition. And then there are parts of Button Creek where there's, there are a couple of utility concerns. There's a substation that is immovable. There is who owns the water valve? A GBR water valve that we affectionately refer to as the valve that supplies water to, half the planet. That's very hard to move. And so there's a combination of things that makes this project complex. And we thought, as we got into it, we'd get questions about it, and that's why, we're tackling it, later on in the list. So you will see, Councilmember, that when we get to the end, that what we are going to do, what we'd like to do, is start all the projects at once, and there are reasons for that. But if I can get through the discussion of the individual projects, we can explain that more, what the logic is and what the benefit is to the city and to the community. This is another place, right? The city's got the roundabouts first policy, but we want to make sure that the roundabout at Goforth, which is recommended in the preliminary engineering report, still makes sense. And I don't mean to call it out, but, we thought if there's something special, if there's a special analysis or a study we're going to do for each one of the projects, we should. But this is another case where we want to make sure the roundabout makes sense so we could keep with the city's roundabouts first policy. Now we're going to move onto Kohlers to Seton. So this project involves, if you are on the west side of I-35, this involves a crossing of I-35. And I think the city would prefer, I think most folks would prefer that Kohlers stay more or less at grade and that I-35 go over Kohlers. From the TxDOT's point of view, we think that they agree that that's probably a good idea because they're doing it up and down I-35. But to get there, they need an analysis done that will get done through the schematic design. So the first part of the project, although it's presented as one, is dealing with how Kohlers either gets over or under I-35. The second part of the project is when you get to the east side of 35, and you come down what we all know as the Caraway Tract, right? You cross BB, and you go all the way down to Seton Parkway. So this is, and this is why we're saving it for lower down the list, this is a pretty complex project, and it's complex because I-35 is an interstate, and whenever you start to work in or around an interstate, TxDOT and the feds get a little anxious because, rightly so, they're very protective of that road because that road has implications way beyond here. And so, that's why it's pretty complex. And I'm going to get to some of that in a second. The budgeted cost for this is just over $66 million. So, as part of the city's ongoing coordination with TxDOT, before the holidays, we were part of a meeting, right, with TxDOT to talk about the bond projects. And part of that meeting was to talk to them about the projects that were on system and the projects that connected, and to figure out the best way to handle them, right? So when we were doing those advanced funding agreements, would we do one agreement to cover everything? Would we separate them? And what TxDOT suggested is that we have a separate agreement for all the projects that simply connect to their system, and that we have a separate agreement, a second agreement for Colas to Seton, and that we have a separate agreement for the Center Street, for the on-portion part of Center Street. So what we're looking at now are agreements with TxDOT on Colas to Seton, Center Street, and all the other projects that connect to the system. So when we drilled into the details with this on TxDOT, there were a couple of things that they verified for us that we knew were out there. To touch I-35, either to bring I-35 over or to bring Colas over, because you're touching the frontage roads and because you're crossing I-35, there is an approval process that can take anywhere between a year and 2 years. And so to keep this project together, you would be delaying everything else, including the piece that goes, again, what we call the Caraway Tract. You'd be grouping that all together, and you'd be looking at a 2 or more year design process to get through what you have to get through with TxDOT. So what TxDOT recommended, and we agree as a technical team, is to separate the two projects, is to treat the crossing of I-35, again, not yet determining whether 35 goes over Colas or the other way around, separating that from the piece that will connect from the frontage road through the Caraway Tract all the way down. And so that is the way we'd like to proceed, which is to separate the two projects. Again, launch I-35, launch the Caraway Tract. So, right, the path forward, and I think it bears worth repeating, divide the project into two. The I-35 crossing, and then from the I-35 frontage road all the way down to Seton Parkway. What we want to do, what we're doing, is eliminating the second alternative included in the PER, is to cross I-35 at BB instead of Colas. As part of thinking through what makes the most sense and looking at, the city's, desired development plans, it just makes perfect sense to cross at Colas and bring the road down. So that is the project. And I'll take a breath there to see if there's anything else any questions you have about that? If not, I'll move on to BB.
The question's still in my head, but I'll ask it later.
Sure.
We'll have to get back to this. It's really a lot of information right there.
There is.
Right?
It
I want
is.
to make sure I understood it all.
It is a complex project. There's a lot of moving parts, but we believe we have a good path forward.
Yes.
So BB Road, it's really it's a realignment of a lot of the sharp curves of BB between I-35 and then upgrading, right? So there's a greenfield piece that coordinates with the Kyle Parkway extension, I'm sorry, the Kohler's, the Kohler's project. And then there's a part of this project that involves the existing portion of Beebe Road. And this project is also very expensive. It's upwards of, it's almost $67 million. And a lot of it has to do with its sheer length, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of properties that would be interrupted, right, that you'd have to get right away from. And so a lot of the cost is not just the construction, it's involved in right away. Now, when we start to look at this project and how it might get done, when we did the preliminary engineering reports with the design engineer and started to think about how would you tackle something like this, it came clear to us that it would be divided sort of into three pieces. The piece that goes from the I-35 frontage road to where you get back onto BB, sort of more or less that greenfield, that new road piece. And then there's this big piece in the middle, and then when you go east, there's an area where the road becomes, it's outside, you know, it becomes like a county road. And so we thought we would separate that out because there's opportunities for coordination and participation by the county, which we'd like to drill into on behalf of the city. And that lessens the impact on, you know, the community, and it just provides the opportunity to get the most out of every section as possible. There was the roundabout. There is a roundabout planned for where Kohler's intersects BB on the Caraway tract. That was originally going to be part of the Kohler's project, and we thought it best to move to BB, you know, for a couple of different reasons. One is that the Kohler's project is complicated enough to the folks that are working on the BB Road project have a lot more experience, you know, with roundabouts, which in this case might be of benefit. And like I said, we're going to divide the project into three pieces to allow for greater construction flexibility. Dividing it into three pieces is also important, at least on the western end, for being able to coordinate with the Kohler's Crossing. And this project, because it touches the I-35 frontage road, is a project that is part of the coordination of TxDOT. It doesn't require its own funding agreement, so it'll be grouped in, again, with all the things that simply connect to the system. Now, there were two options for this. Alternative one, the basic difference between the two options is alternative one would take BB and have it connect right north of where it currently is, but more importantly, it moves the roundabout further into the Caraway tract. And our view was that just complicates matters a little bit with TxDOT because you're moving where it connects to the frontage road. And, you know, if you're trying to make as much of that tract available, you know, for desired growth and development, let's see if we could do anything to move the roundabout further out of the way. So alternative two makes the most use of existing BB Road, right? It would be like a reconstruction and upgrade, but you're on top of the existing road, and it gets the roundabout not totally out of the way, but it gets it to the lower, you know, right corner of the Caraway tract. And it just makes, you know, for more, you know, efficiencies from the point of view of development, from the point of view of the road system, and from the point of view of having to coordinate with TxDOT. Both options do get rid of that sharp curve as you're coming off BB and headed out to the frontage road, and both options still require, you know, a crossing of the waterway there.
So in number two, you're going to take advantage of the road that's already existing, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Well, just from looking at it, I mean, that would appear, I guess, smarter than the first one, because then you have two roads that you're looking at.
Right, and that's
You're putting more impervious surface all over there.
and it gets the roundabout out of the middle of a piece of property that our assumption is the city would like to see developed, right?
Yeah, well, I think there's also cost savings right there, isn't there? Since you already have some road just to improve.
There should be, but again.
Taxpayers love that. But also, I want to ask you, is this a 64-foot slab of road? Because it looks like it's very wide. Do you have 12, 12, 16, 12, 12? So is this going to be a 64
Oh, geez.
feet wide road, BB?
The right-of-way, so there's three pieces, right? There's a piece of BB that's west of Kohler's to Seaton, so that where that roundabout is, going out to the frontage, that's a three-lane section. The piece that goes from there east is down as a four-lane section. So the right-of-way varies from almost 70 feet to like 100 feet. But this, the complication of this project, right, is that when you take it east, right, onto more or less existing BB Road, and you try and get those 2 lanes in each direction with the turn lane in, there are a lot of properties that will be affected. And so right-of-way acquisition is going to be pretty, intense and substantial.
So are we looking at the length, 60 feet?
I'm sorry, sir?
60 feet on the 4-lane minor? I'm just trying to envision
No,
how much of the,
so the right-of-way is 100 feet. The portion of that 100 feet that would be taken up by the road
yeah,
would be about 68 feet,
that,
right?
that's what I wanted
Exactly,
to.
yes.
That's what I wanted to.
So the difference between the 100 and the 68 are for, the sidewalks and for drainage and things like that. Now, this project, again, 2 lanes in each direction because the city's master plan anticipated a lot of demand on this, and a turn lane. But, there is a lot of to be done with regard to right-of-way acquisition and with regard to utility coordination. So this is why, I explained the complexities of Kohler's, and we're talking about the complexities of BB. And, Kohler's, the complexities mostly have to deal with I-35. BB, the complexities have to deal with, the overall length and utility coordination and right-of-way acquisition. So I'm going to take another breath.
Could you go back to the next slide, please?
The
real
one,
quick?
just tell me, that one?
No, the one that had the proposed,
That one?
one, no, after that one. One more? Yeah, just give me one. And if there a way that you can send that to us as like a PowerPoint presentation?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
I-
I'm just trying to match what I have in the real map to figure out what the plan is gonna be.
And I guess, Tanya, didn't want to interrupt. Did you have a question?
I'm done. I just wanted to see what is that green section that you have in there in the road? The one that is connecting to, oh my God, I hate that I cannot zoom in here. That green, yeah, what is that? Is that just like a connection to the old BB Road if
Exactly.
we were gonna leave it in there?
Yeah,
But
yes.
that's gonna be gone, would that be gone, right? If we were to go with alternative two, would that be gone? Oh,
It's to provide connection to that development. Because if you move BB Road out, you still need a way for those folks.
okay, I guess my question will be, going with alternative to using part of BB Road, the pre-existing road, maybe adding that roundabout in there, what will happen to the rest of that curve
So
where BB currently is?
The green part, right, is what's needed to provide local access, right? The part between the roundabout and the green part could be taken out, could be abandoned.
Okay,
Now, what happens to that, we haven't dug into, but it wouldn't be needed.
Okay.
If you provide that connection from relocated BB back into the subdivision.
all right. I mean, you guys are the engineers. I know you will figure it out. I was just wondering, but thank you.
On the map, I guess the blue, is that a floodplain this
Yes.
road's going over? Did any of the others merge or go through floodplains as well? Or is this the only one pointed out? And so I guess we're gonna have to, that's gonna be elevated definitely for,
Right, yes, yes, sir. That'll be either, I think we're thinking a bridge? A bridge, or it'll be some sort of bridge, whether it's a
Yeah.
bridge or just culverts that,
any other of the roads in floodplain areas? I mean, this is a small section piece.
Windy Hill.
Windy Hill was?
Right, Windy Hill.
Are we also putting a bridge there?
Marketplace.
Anticipating bridge or?
There will be some sort of elevated structure, probably culverts as opposed to a bridge. But there will be some way for the water to pass under the roads.
And same thing with Marketplace. But again,
And do we have, I guess, permits fined by
no, not yet.
FEMA?
Not yet. That's part of the design process, but that's drainage and transportation go hand in hand. And again, what we cannot do, the design engineers cannot do, is they can't design a project that makes drainage worse. And so when you build a road like this, right, you relocate the road, as Jennifer started to say, right, we have to have a way for the water to pass underneath. And it may look and feel like a bridge, or it may be a bunch of culverts, right, that look and feel like a bridge. But that all gets calculated, and it all has to get permitted. And depending on, you know, the nature of the floodway and what the road's going to do, determines how complicated or not it is to get those permits. But none of these projects that involve floodways or the movement of water underneath them, you know, or otherwise through them, are going to be done without permitting. But that permitting can't be done until the design gets further advanced. Right, at this stage, we're just laying out issues and we know what it's up against us. That helps us define the scope to make sure that we've allocated time and expense to the permitting. And there's lots of other things like that, right? And I'm going to talk about some of those other things in a second. If I may, I'm going to skip this updates to council because we're on I think it might be best to flow into the next steps. And so what we're moving forward with, right, I guess, you know, assuming, you know, the results of today, is that we'd like to finalize the design scopes and fees, you know, and bring it back to council in February. This way, you'll know exactly what is in the scope for the design engineers and what it's going to cost to get the design done. And we think, because we got a head start with them, we didn't finish everything, that we could come back in February to do that. The other thing is that we want to begin the design for all the projects as soon as possible, right? Now, the idea over starting them all at once is that they'll all proceed at different rates, right? Some complex, I mean, they're all interesting, they all have their own ins and outs and complexities. But the idea is that if we start them all at once, they will naturally sort of start to order themselves in terms of when they'll be ready for construction. What we can do, though, is we could also see if there's a reason to speed something up or slow something down, right? We're just engaged in getting the projects done. Council may have different priorities or different concerns, different things that you're trying to work out. And so, you know, we start everything at once. If we're left alone, we will just get them done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But we also have the opportunity, right, as they get through a design to either slow something down or speed something up. And if that's possible, we'll do it. If two things are headed for construction that will conflict with each other, we'll come back and say, listen, Project A and Project B can't be done at the same time because they'd cause too much of an interruption. What do you want us to do? We'd have a recommendation. So we want to start them all at the same time. That maximizes the flexibility that we have in being able to process the projects and develop them through design and into construction. It also allows us to get through the program, as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We also, after today, again, assuming, the results of today, we want to refine, finalize, and then come back at a council meeting and share our preliminary master schedule. We're going to continue, actually, continue is the wrong word. We're going to step up the coordination with TxDOT. We're going to start to draft, define those advanced funding agreements and make sure that the program is in sync with TxDOT's ideas. Those advanced funding agreements can take some time, and so we want to get a jump on those. We want to continue to, as we refine the design scopes and actually enter the design phases, whether we're finalizing a schematic or whether we're going to PS&E, we want to figure out if there's ways to get ahead on right-of-way acquisition and utility coordination. There are lots of things that your GEC, our team, can control and exert influence over, right, in response to your, direction and your preferences. There are two areas, though, where if we are worried about losing a little bit of control or influence, it's right-of-way acquisition and it's utility coordination. Utility coordination can take a lot of time. Utilities are, they're very busy. There's a lot of demand for their time, and they don't always, or they're not always able to, adhere to the schedules that we all lay out. And so the sooner you start with them, the better. And that is an area where we will constantly be working to maintain control and influence over. The other area is right-of-way acquisition. These projects, right, they all have their complexities. Some of them have to do with right-of-way acquisition. And we will, I don't know how else to say this, we will probably encounter a few cases where the negotiations for right-of-way will not go as smoothly or as friendly as we hope them to be. And if we have to move into like an adverse possession, which is code for like an eminent domain or condemnation, that can take time. But we wanted to make you aware that we're going to try and get ahead on all of that. But I also wanted to make you aware that if, in spite of the fact that we all have this master schedule and we're as conservative as we think we should be at the time with regard to right-of-way acquisition and utility coordination, that there are things about both those items that are a little bit out of our control that can ultimately cause a little bit of a delay. But we're going to do the best we can to control it. We're going to continue, landowner and developer coordination. And as we proceed through the design, all of that gets formalized. I mentioned before that we're working on an outreach plan that will involve sort of program-wide updates, right? That may involve some in-person stuff, but certainly information, everything we produce can be posted to a web page on the county's, to a page on the city's website. But also, we will have outreach for individual projects. And again, we want to begin, in some cases, ramp up, partner agency coordination. We need to coordinate with Hayes County and look for opportunities to partner with them. And there are agencies like Alliance Regional Water where coordination is very important and needs to start in earnest, immediately. And I've already talked about the community outreach plan. So I'm going to take a breath there, and then if we have a minute after we answer your questions, we'd like to talk a little bit about getting some feedback and what the right way to interact with you, with the council in the future might be.
One of the, well, I actually am afraid I'm going to take what you're going to say, so I'm going to let you go first. I was going to talk about the website.
Oh, I was about to
That's
talk
what
about that.
yeah, okay, go ahead.
So, since this is the one time that I feel like Cal has spent that amount of money on a bond, I do want everybody to be as informed as I can. I would like to continue having the domain that we have right now, since it's already out there. I don't think it's very well known, but it does need to be redesigned completely. It doesn't have clear information. I know that you guys didn't do that. I know there was somebody else there, but if there is a possibility for us to maybe acquire that domain and keep it for the Cal bonds, that would be fantastic. I would like for each project to have their individual sub-page inside that domain, where we can see hopefully a weekly construction or task schedule. And if you guys are going to be working on each of them at the same time, at least like the design part and all of that, to have some sort of, so the residents know, okay, this is where this project is going. And once construction starts, because I'm assuming all construction is going to be obviously at the same time, that people can go in there and see where are we in each of the steps as we continue, this project probably for the next 5-10 years. I don't know how it's going to last. But I do want for each page to have that ability to be individually, for residents to be able to see where we are at, for them to be able to reach out to the manager of that road, that construction, so they can communicate with you guys. So each road is going to have their own manager. Not everybody's going to be working on not the same companies are going to be working in each road. Exactly, correct?
Yes, Councilmember, that's correct.
Okay, so if the contact information of each project can be displayed in there, that would be good for us too. I would like to know which one of you is going to be the manager for each road.
That all makes perfect sense, and actually, we're in the same place, right? As the folks that are managing this for you, right, we try and minimize interruptions, and a lot of times interruptions come from not keeping people informed, right? People are either happy or they're not about what you're doing, but they really get unhappy if they can't find information. So it's actually to our benefit as well as your benefit if we post information. Someone should be able to go to that webpage on the city's site and be able to see what each project is and where we are with the project. Now, during the design process, there's not going to be a lot of activity, but when we get to construction, the one thing I will say though is part of our job is to keep a record and to control, not control what people say or what they do, but is to just, I guess the best way is to track communications. And so we have to think through whether or not the right thing to do is to let the public loose on all the different design engineers. Our job is to keep everything straight and to keep the design engineers, although they're working on different projects, right, to make sure that everybody, whether you're the design engineer, that everybody gets the same level of response, sort of like, just to keep it consistent. And so we may come back with a slightly different proposal that says, okay, if you're a citizen and you have a question about this project, this is how you contact us. And then this way we could make sure that the design engineers all respond in the same way, in the same time frame, and that we can track the communications. Because you will come back and ask us, how many questions did you get, right? You'll want to know how many questions we got, what our answers were for every project. And so I hope you'll allow us to just think that through a little bit.
Oh,
and come
absolutely.
back with, more detailed plan that gets you guys exactly what you need, but also allows us to do our job for you.
And I don't want to overwhelm you with residents saying, hey, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like the road. because that's what we're here for. They're gonna reach out to
Right.
us before they reach out to you, and you know, of course, we trust you. I mean, you guys are the engineers. I'm excited to see you guys moving forward to the design part of this, because I think everything will make a lot more sense than what it makes sense. Like right now, we have a lot of questions, but you know, not all designs are even close to be made. So, but what I do wanted to see was, you know, I just something like this, like some sort of weekly construction. And I know if the design is gonna take like 3 months, then just leave the whole thing for 3 months or something like that. I want the people to be able to take a look in there to see, okay, they just finalized with like BB design, exciting, just for the residents to be informed and for us to be informed. That's
That's
all.
exactly what we're intending to do. There's a guy sitting over here that's just dying to finish that master schedule and to let it loose. And they're on our team, but I'll tell you that they're the ones, I mean, it's like, calling, the missiles in on yourself, right? They're part of the team to keep us straight. And they will do reporting, right? Again, to make sure that we're doing, right, what we committed to do. And they're the keepers of the schedule. And really, again, the reason to have like sort of one pipe for everything to go through is everything from, we don't want there to be any confusion with communications. We want people throughout the city, whether they're on the east side, west side, whether it's a new road or reconstruction, we want them to get the same level and type of information. We don't want anyone coming to you saying, well, I live near Windy Hill Road, why am I getting less information than the folks that, live near, Center Street? Then we're not doing our job. But again, we want to make sure that all goes smoothly, and that people know where to find information, and if there's a question they have, or there's a bit of information that they want that they don't see, that they get it. So that website, to our way of thinking, will not only have information about the projects, but it'll have information about how we're performing, right? If something's ahead of schedule, behind schedule,
Oh, I would love that.
I'm not sure, I'm too excited about it. But
Yes, no, me too. I am very excited. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Look forward to
Thank you.
seeing things.
So whose scope is it to build and maintain and update a website? Is that in your
It's
scope?
ours. We have, a community outreach, public outreach, right? Gap Strategy is not here today, but they're part of the team, and their job, and we started that now, but again, we wanted to get through today. We started to sketch out what that plan will look like, and we're waiting for comments, and we're going to go back and finalize the plan, and we'll send it, we'll come back to council and present that plan and make sure it makes sense before we implement it.
The plan for
For outreach,
outreach?
right, for outreach, which includes, Mayor, how that page on the website will come together, what will it include, and things like that.
Is there, that's included in the funding already, or would there be potentially a request to budget for
Right
website
now,
building?
For our team, and who knows what the future brings, we're doing pretty well with what has been assigned to us so far, but it's included in the funding.
I kind of want everyone to hear this, but in my mind, building this is a really great time for us to get real clear about what our expectation is for that website. And I think that it's important that right now, as we're getting ready to build these programs, and this website should last for years, it should be something that is top grade in terms of its functionality, interactive, how interactive it can be, how much information that it gives. And it's not to say that we're copy and pasting Gantt charts up on the website and telling people to go figure it out. It's designed for public consumption, so it should be thought about in that way, so that if you go there, what's the average person going to want to know when they're looking at any individual roads, and how easily can they get to that information? So to me, that's should be a priority, is making sure that as we're launching this program, we also have the mindset. It's not like we're tacking on a website. It's we're launching a multi-year long website. So for myself, if there's an investment that needs to be made to build the back end of a platform to allow for that to happen, that's something I would be interested in looking at.
Okay.
And then And then also consistency between the projects, exactly as you said. So I just want to reiterate what Councilmember Parsley is saying, and I'm not going to want to let that go either, because that is something that will help us all, because when folks come and have questions about road projects, any question they can have nearly should be available to them right then and there, and all we'll have to do is direct them to the project, and it can be where we go to get our own answers as well.
You know, I completely understand, and we fully agree. The only thing I'll add is that I do get it, right? We do understand that website, right? What we're doing, because this is going to take more than a couple of years to implement everything, is that we're building a relationship with the community, and the website is a big part of that, right? So we do understand that it has to, live for a couple of years. And we do understand that it needs to be updated and easy to navigate. So we're going to get to work on completing that outline and that plan, and we'll come back, right, to a council meeting if that makes sense to you all. And we'll say, this is what we're thinking. Did we capture everything that you told us on that Saturday, the 28th, right? The 28th.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll go ahead and let Ms. Flores go. I'll be one of the last, so that way I'll be the last one.
You don't have to.
That way you have any questions.
Well, I just want to point out that under the work authorization, I don't know if there's another one besides the one in January, it specifically talks about developing and maintaining a program website to disseminate road bond project information. And so when Mayor Mitchell asked if there was an additional cost, I couldn't imagine that this is not going to be included. And I guess kind of what we want to know is, like, is it going to be real-time events and updates? We want to stay updated, but as much as us, it's going to be the residents that want to be updated. So I'm hoping that we don't get an additional charge for something that's already within the scope of work.
No, I said that was included in our scope of work.
I expect that just in the professional services for a project like this, that you would have some design of a website for.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add about just posting information to the website is, and I think I mentioned this before, is when we start the design, right, and the ramp up to the amount of information, the detail, right, that'll ramp up as we get further into the project. So over time, it'll get more, more intense, right? Mm-hmm. There'll be more information. We'll have to pay closer attention to make sure, to the mayor's point, that people can navigate and find the information easily. But in the beginning, when we're just starting the design, there's not going to be a lot to share with people other than we're in design. When we have something to report, we'll come out and see you, and this is the schedule. And then as you get through the design and there's information for people to look at, more information will get added. The interactions with the public, in real time, right, and in person will ramp up. And then when we go through construction, there's going to be a lot of interactions and a lot of reporting. And that's sort of the same way when we talk about reporting to you, right? I mean, well, I don't know. I wanted to get into this, but I don't want to cut anybody off.
Well, I want to circle back to that, because I understand that maybe it's within the scope, but there's a huge wide range of what that could mean to you as far as what does building a website look like for this program. I've seen bond programs that the county has done and that other jurisdictions have done, and the interaction that I've had on their websites have been decent. Some are better than others. But this is, in my mind, this is the $294 million road bond. So the reason I'm asking about costs is because I don't want anything to, as far as what the goal is and obstacles to that goal, I don't want any obstacles to be given. I just want to achieve the goal. And the goal is to build the best road bond website in the entire region in terms of usability, interactive features. So when you say there's really nothing to be done right now as far as updates, I'm thinking to myself, I'm nervous about that, because I'm thinking that right now there's a ton of work to be done to actually build a website that has the kind of interactive features that, at least is in my head for us to do.
And we're talking about, Mayor, I think, two different things. I was saying in terms of reporting, there was a lot of work.
Right,
to get
that's
done
why
to
I'm
get it
coming
ready.
back, 'cause I
Right,
hear you say
exactly, yes.
reporting, and I'm talking about website building. I'm
So-
talking about back-end creating of creating of a website that people can go to that is going to be interactive with maps and features so that you can learn, and like a lot of time needs to be put into building this website. And if that's not something that's why I'm talking about scope, because there are companies who specialize in building really great websites, and that costs money. And so I'm wanting, I don't want you to say, well, that's not something that is within our abilities to do as far as
I-
the
I- I
interactive elements and
understand.
stuff like that.
I imagine that, again, assuming, we get through today, that once we initiate the process you're describing, that our team will interact a lot with the folks at the city that manage the city's website, right? That, I think, as much as anything else, is going to be sort of a cooperative effort. We will be producing the stuff in the page that sits on the county's website, right? And so we have to if there's something, that the city needs to do, right, to make it easier for us, right, that we can't do because it's the city's website and it's the city's service and all that business, we'll work it out.
That's why I'm bringing it up in front of staff and here in this time, because I want Jerry to understand, because I don't know if it's something that we need to be building a website that you can park the information on, or who needs to be, I just want someone to be in charge of understanding, saying that they understand what we're trying to achieve, and that they are going to make sure that we are able to achieve that with a really great, really great website.
Right, and the guidance you're all giving us now is very helpful. We completely understand what, so far you've told us in terms of what you want and how you want it to work and function. What we'll start to do is to add detail to that so you can see it and say, yes, Joe, that's exactly what we're asking, or close, but you need to make these adjustments. The other thing we need to work out with city staff are the mechanics of, okay, this is what we want to do for the bond program. How does that, is that compatible with the way you run your website or not? And if it isn't, then we'll have to figure out how we get it done. But it's this is what our team does, so.
Councilman Zuniga.
Thank you. So, on the BB Road and the Layman pictures, proofs, you did a really good job on showing us what it would look like. So then I was able to catch that I would not like to see a road side by side next to another road. But on all the other bonds, roads, you didn't provide us that level of detail contour. So are we going to have that opportunity to see it again in a fashion like this? So why did you not bring that so we could see it, visually? Because I'm having a hard time with that. 35 Caraway, what is that going to look like? But when I saw these here, I can see your roundabouts, how they're going to go, what the traffic pattern could look like. And I'm kind of a little disappointed that on the others, I don't see much other than I must know that there used to be a road and it's going to get a little wider. And so this is what I wanted to see, right? Like this kind of stuff right here.
Well, I apologize for that. And it's probably my mistake. We had been through all those more detailed schematic designs, earlier in the process. And I guess I lost sight of the fact that we have a couple of new council members. But I can offer you this. There are, if you're on your way out this afternoon, you could, and I don't know
Yeah,
if you've
if I
seen them.
missed it, then I missed
No,
it.
no, no,
But
no,
I wasn't
no,
sure
no,
if I
no.
missed something, or is this the
This
first
is
time
me This
I'm
is me
seeing this?
missing that you weren't given the opportunity.
Because when I saw the road bond, I think I just saw maps, right? But now you actually brought more realistic infrastructure. And so we're at that point now where we should start to see what it looks like. And I think hitting BB, you hit it right on the bullseye. That's what it should look like.
Right.
That
Well, the
road, there
design
should-
is not done yet, so. I'm
Right,
assuming-
but the designs are not done, but this is kind of looking at what are the designs, what are the intentions already?
So I could give,
We
I
have-
could
we
offer,
have-
I could offer you two things.
We're like in phase
So-
one, really.
So
We-
we have 10% schematics on all the roads. I've had to request them a couple times. It would be good, I think, maybe for the new council members to make sure that all those 10% schematics, drilled into a PDF are sent, so that they can have a chance to just kind of go through and look at it at that level.
That's exactly what I was going to offer. We
Right,
could
'cause-
send you a link to those 10% schematics.
Right. Is that something shareable to like the whole residents? This is what it looks like. I guess that's what the mayor's
Sure,
asking
they,
for.
they are
Yeah,
up
they're
on.
on the wall
Working
out
dump.
there too.
They're on
Yeah.
the wall, and I think they were, no, well, I don't want to speak, I thought they were put up on the website, but no, we will send the link out to you, and while we're figuring out what, the website presence will ultimately look like, if council wants them put on the city's, website now, that's certainly it. We had a workshop that showed the schematics. They're posted outside, and we can resend the link to everyone. We won't assume that everyone still has the link that contains all the 10% schematics. And those are the BB Road looking
To the
diagrams.
grass, to the water, to the existing road.
Whatever those 10% schematics were. But I want
I
to,
apologize if I missed it.
no.
It's-
I just want to caution you that when we did the 10% schematics, it was a very, very tight deadline. So you might see a little bit of variation in what they show and how they show them. But again, to the mayor's point, they were 10% schematics. They were done to just give us a really, really good idea as to what the cost would be. So council knew, could have a little bit of faith in what it was authorizing. And so we could get a good idea as to what the issues were. So you'll see a little bit of variation in them, but they will all, what we'll send you and what the link will have are diagrams, 10% schematics that look like BB roads. Some will look a little bit more complicated than others,
Okay,
okay? But we'll get that out, if not today, early next week.
okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I just wanted to quickly say thank you for the presentation. I see that all of y'all have put a lot of hard work into this, so I appreciate that. I want to say thank you to the new teams that are here. I'm very excited to see that, so welcome aboard on that. I think it's very important for our residents to see that we will have individual team members, leaders that will be directed or assigned to each project, so I think that really helps. Thank you to the residents and landowners that are here. It's very important that we see you here. We appreciate your feedback and being here to hear this. So one of the things that I just would like to bring up and things to consider, and also for council and everybody else, when it comes to the roundabouts and the traffic signals, something we need to consider. What is the main accomplishment or the main goal for either or? Safety versus the convenience for the drivers. Number 3 would be the traffic flow, which would be to improve the congestion and time lapse for being in traffic, versus the traffic control, which leads to speeding and accident prevention. Okay. That I had a discussion with a resident, and this person in Bunting Creek was really all for roundabouts. So those are people that are positive sides for a roundabout versus I hear people that are concerned about roundabouts, especially in a school zone area where you do have students coming back and forth and so forth. The other things to think about when we're doing roundabouts is if we're going to add 2 lanes as far as the turning, who's going to be turning left, who's going to be turning right, and also the speed of it all. And again, also in a school zone. Again, we have to consider the safety, public safety, and that's always been my top priority for the residents that are in the area versus the convenience for drivers to get through. So that's my comment on that. And then when it comes to the context with the county and TxDOT, I think it's already been addressed. I think you've already brought it up, and other council members have brought this. But who and what and who would be our contacts with the county if it's commissioners or the county road projects individuals, text dot. As we move forward and we update our out of county or state boundary or city boundaries, that we identify those. Because Councilmember Parsley and I, we took a little road tour around that area, and as we were going past Bunton, we noticed that it said Hayes County Maintenance Ends. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought we were still in the city, but now why does the sign say it ends? So I wonder if some of these signs or these boundaries through years of annexation or areas like that need to be updated. So that way when residents are trying to figure out, is this a county road or is this part of the bond road from the city, they have an updated area. Also, number 2 would be to collaborate with the divisions of future projects. That would include federal funding, which we have here, advanced funding agreements with TxDOT. If there's any funding that's going to be coming our way to the county or from a state level, if we can tap into some of that, to maybe offset some of these bonds or to help with any of the development or the engineering, we can use that. And for the city, I know that with these engineering projects and once the construction goes on, I hope we can be able to make sure we have partnerships with our Public Works Department, especially with the CIP projects, anything going forward. So as they are constructing, each one of these teams that are designing and building the roads, that they updates Harper and his crew in his street division to where if they need any kind of assistance or any kind of leverage on that end, that way when we take over the roads, we have that full history of there was an easement here, or this used to be a creek, or this used to be water pipes, things like that. So those are things that we can take in consideration as we move forward. And also public input. I think we've all hit that this last conversation we had with the web page, the web design, making sure our landowners and our residents are aware on a weekly, well, not so much a weekly, but as needed basis for them. I think when we're looking at interactive, I think of my days years ago working for a tech company, we look at maybe making videos, adding real-time photos, having a back history of the road bond of like when it all began, 2019, 20, and then we can be able to send residents, like Ms. Parsley was saying, this is my area of town. I see constructions going on. What's the update? We can send them the link. And then that link would say BB Road, or that link would say Old Stagecoach Road. They will have interactive video, photographs, phase 1, phase 2, and the dates, estimated completions. Now, I know Councilman Zuniga was bringing up the maps and the design. Again, it's 10% design right now, but those could change. So if we send all that out now, people are going to assume it's going to be looking like this. But in reality, once we start digging, we notice that there's barriers, there's creeks, there's hills, there's valleys, there's dunes, whatever it is. Those are going to change. So updating each individual page, right, that has interactive video, interactive maps, because that's what people usually want to do. They want to see it for themselves and also read, this is the timeline for completion, this is the timeline for this, this is the type of information we're having, roundabouts are going to be start going forth. That way we can send each person their link, because everybody lives around town and they may not be worried about BB if they live over there off Center Street, so we can direct them individually to that. And also, like they were stating as well, having a point of contact, whether it's with council, and then we can be able to reach out to the team members and work with the resident if they have follow-up questions on that end. So we can have that council member for this area or at large or whoever, and it has the manager and also somebody for the city, so that way they could have 3 contacts if need be. And then we can be able to work collaboratively with the residents on that level there, and then they can then pass that information from there. If we need to use social media, we can look at doing something like that. I know there's a lot of generation people that use the TikToks and whatever. I don't know if we need to go that route, But as far as Facebook, I know a lot of people use that social media versus websites, and we can do some kind of interactive on that end. Phase one on BB Road completion, here's a photo, here's a video. We can maybe collaborate with our IT and our media if something that Rachel and them would be interested in, or we can help work together with to show, hey, here's an aerial view of what's going on Stagecoach. Phase one's being completed. This is the timeline, and we just interact it from there, and we can send people the link, and then they can share it without the residents. So that would be my feedback on that. But other than that, thank you for the presentation, and I yield the floor.
I did have a question. Oh, so I did find the website. Thank you. So it does have it. There's some aerials. Thank you, Daniela, for sending it. So that is the point. Windy Hill Road, I asked you earlier about the S curvature. There's already an existing road there, but this new project is not reusing the already existing road somehow. You don't have it in here like you did on BB Road. Just so we already have a road. I don't want to see two parallel roads.
No, the idea would be for Windy Hill, relocating it and then figuring out how to get, we'd be abandoning the part that's been relocated.
Okay, so we're removing that.
Right, and it's to make the road safer and more efficient,
We're reducing the curve.
the curve.
Okay,
And so there will be, and I can't recite the exact portion, but there'll be a portion of it, of existing Windy Hill Road that will no
Yeah.
longer be used.
that,
And part of it might get reused for the vibe.
Well, so we haven't really figured all that out yet,
Right.
except to know that there is an existing piece of Windy Hill Road that will not be used and will either be abandoned or used for another purpose. And that might even involve, coordination with property owners, because right-of-way is needed. There's a lot of things that could go on with that. But I think to answer your question, that curve
because I
on
want to
Windy
see
Hill
I
Road.
want to see very clean roads in our community, in our city, right?
Yeah.
So we're demoing that part, we're moving the road.
Well, again, I don't want you to assume that the road is going to be demoed. It'll be abandoned. If there's another use for it, right, for like a trail, right? But again,
Right.
Councilmember, these are
Right,
all
right.
things that
Right.
get figured out as we get through the design. And I do recognize that at 10%, there's a ton of questions that we don't have the answers to yet.
Right.
But that is not because we've not drilled into it. That is by design, because the nature of the process is when you're up here, you have lots of questions and lots of
Right.
ideas, and as you get down, and so I do know that there's a portion of Windy Hill Road that will not be used for cars anymore. What actually happens to that has yet to be figured out, right? And now, your input's important, right, to say that you just don't want old roads lying around, right, and I get it.
Right. Who
But
wants?
if there's another, if there's another use for it that you might be interested in, we'd like to come back with that. If giving up that swath, right, to be able to get the right-of-way for the new road, I mean, there's lots of things that can happen, but that's what today is about. It's to let you know where we are and how we want to move forward, so we can get all these answers and get things underway.
And if I might add, when it comes to that BB Road where the curve was, where Ms. Parsley was kind of questioning what would we do with it, and same thing with your question, there might be another development of that mobile home park on that other side. So it could be used, instead of tearing that curve out, that could be used part of the new subdivision. It's something to look at.
Yeah.
And it's all in design process.
Right.
Okay, it's all using what resources we have. And if there's another part of that development that's coming in the near future, you're right. We could use that part of that road, instead of gutting it, we could say, hey, look, let's go and improve it and make that another entrance or an exit, or a more safer entrance and exit to that subdivision, in using whatever we have there and using that. So it's just thinking that way.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, anything else? That's pretty good timing. So I'm going to suggest that we actually convene, give ourselves a chance to have a bathroom break and grab some of the food in the back. We'll gavel in at 10:10. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Did you want to finish?
No.